Welcome to another edition of Hey Bobby with VP of the Cleveland Indians, our good friend Bobby DiBiasio. And it's brought to you by our good friends with WAKR with NECA-IBEW. And Bobby, I thought today we could spend some time in doing some Indians history with a wonderful book that you've turned me on to. I just got the book about a week or so ago called Our Team, which goes back to the 48s and the personality when you talk about Satchel Page and Bob Feller and Larry Doby, and of course, one Bill Veeck. So let's get into that a little bit, and then we can branch off. And I guess, first of all, talk about how this book came together and your viewpoint of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I've been recommending this book to every baseball fan that I possibly could come across because I think of it, it's an absolutely terrific read. And you don't necessarily even need to be a hardcore baseball fan to love this book because it really speaks to uh, America post World War II, speaks to integration, and it also speaks to the four gentlemen that you referenced. Bill Veeck and Bob Feller, Larry Doby, Satchel Page, and how they all came together to win the 1948 World Series. The author, Luke Epplin, ironically, is from St. Louis. Um, and I've had an opportunity to interview him for a few Zoom connects with the Indians front office and some others. And it was interesting that I asked him, how does this sort of thing come swimming in your head and become a book where you really identified, people like Bill Veeck and Larry Doby and Satchel and Bob Feller, again, post World War II America, integration, et cetera. How does all of that come together to focus in on a book? And he just thought that it really was an incredibly interesting time in our country's history, of course, and how the city of Cleveland was at the forefront of integration, social change, how the Cleveland Indians played an incredible role in that. And painstakingly, he said the process wasn't easy. He dug through so many newspapers and other research. I had an opportunity to chat with him while he was first beginning the concept of the book and putting him in touch with certain people. Jeremy Fedor, who is the Cleveland Indians archivist, historian, helped Luke Epplin, the author, um, find certain things that helped him move the storyline along. So we felt good that we were a part of this book. Because again, I just think it's an absolutely terrific read.
Let me go down a couple of roads here, and then you can kind of take it from there a couple of ways. And one of them is talk about Larry Doby a little bit. I know you had a very good relationship with Larry. He didn't hit the ground running when he came to the Yankees, Indians, I should, struggled a little bit and then got things going. So talk about his struggles because, that's worst case scenario for him at that point is to struggle out of the gates being the second black player in Major League Baseball. So hit that for me, Bobby.
Well, I think there's a little um, history lesson here. Um, I happen to go to Ohio Wesleyan University, same university as Branch Rickey. Um, Branch Rickey, as you know, was the man who integrated baseball by identifying Jackie Robinson as the young man, athlete, um, officer in the military, played college baseball at UCLA, was already part of an integrated society growing up in California, that this was a young man that he felt could handle the hardships that would come his way in breaking the color barrier in baseball. So Branch Rickey brought Jackie Robinson to the Dodgers. Not many people may know this, but he brought him to the Dodgers in 1946. to play a whole season of AAA. So he had a spring training, a AAA season in Montreal with many of his soon-to-be Dodger teammates. Then he had spring training of 1947 and made the club. He had somewhat of a drum roll, very strategic, organized plan by Branch Rickey to make sure that Jackie was put in a position to succeed, because they just certainly did not want this to fail. It was a lifelong dream of Branch Rickey to integrate baseball. And when he became the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers, he had the power to do so, against a lot of angst and anger from his colleagues. Well, Larry Doby was a completely different scenario. Larry Doby's playing for the Newark Eagles, and I think he was playing actually in both games of a doubleheader when the owners of the Newark Eagles came to him and said that his contract was purchased by the Cleveland Indians, and he had to get on a train and get to Chicago. The Indians were in Chicago at Comiskey Field. And so here's this young man, 22, 23. Jackie Robinson happened to be, I think, 27, a little bit older when he integrated with the Dodgers. Larry was 22, 23 years old. And all of a sudden, he's playing with the Newark Eagles one day, and the next day he's walking into the clubhouse at Comiskey Park in Chicago as a second baseman. And the Cleveland Indians already have Joe Gordon at second base in a season in which they think they have a chance to upend the Yankees to win the pennant. And Joe Gordon had played for the Yankees and was an American League Most Valuable Player for the Yankees. So people were wondering, what's Bill Veeck doing? We already have a second baseman. Larry Doby ended up scuffling through the 47 season. And as the season progressed, he shows up in July. So for the rest of the season, he's playing a little second, he's playing a little first, he's just bouncing around. And at the end of the year, the Indians coaching staff came to him and said, "We think you'd be better served in the outfield. You should go home and take a lot of fly balls in center field." And next thing you know, he becomes a Hall of Fame all-star center fielder, leading the league in homers one year, ribbies the next, and becoming, one of the absolute key performers in the 1948 World Series club and beyond. And just a remarkable difference of the two men. The hardships they had to endure are unimaginable. And they came about it in two different directions.
With us is the vice president of the Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio. It's called Hey Bobby, brought to you by NECA-IBEW. So let's get into the 48 a little bit. I know years gone by, Bob Feller told me that 54 was better than our 48 team. That's up for debate. But the 48 team, certainly you have Larry Doby emerging, and Satchel Page comes in there. Talk about Satchel, who was very flamboyant coming into that clubhouse, Bobby, and going off the WAKR team, and then what that meant to Larry Doby with Satchel Page coming into that clubhouse.
Well, it was interesting because one of the things that I did talk to Larry Doby about, and as you mentioned, I had the honor and privilege to call Larry Doby a friend for close to 30 years. And his son, Larry Jr. and I, we probably talk almost once a week, once every other week. We become very close friends as well. And that's the one question I would ask him is, what was it like rooming with Satchel Page because of the age difference? You have somebody in their 20s and another person in their late 40s who was incredibly flamboyant and stayed out at all hours of the night and was larger than life, like Bob Feller. Feller and Page had their traveling all-stars. Once the season ended, the two of them had so many more similarities than differences. And back in the day, they both understood that as pitchers standing on that mound, in the game of baseball that they were the show, and they could take their show on the road and face each other and make each other some money and others around them some money. So their barnstorming tours with Feller and Page, the traveling all stars. Um, I just, if you go back in time and it's like, what sporting event would you have loved to seen? That's one in my top five easily. Is I would have loved to seen one of those barnstorming tours um, with Satchel and Bob Feller, and just watch Satchel take that stroll from the bullpen that he did, supposedly the way Luke Epplin writes it and others have written about it. You know, that nice, slow, lanky, tall, skinny, lanky guy strolling from the bullpen to the pitcher's mound. Um, Adding somebody of that nature, you know, Lou Boudreau is spelled out in the book, thought Bill Veeck, Satchel Page might be, you know, akin to the exploding scoreboard or other things that Bill Veeck was known for to bring entertainment aspect to the game of baseball, until Lou Boudreau, and the story goes, put a handkerchief over the home plate, like the inside corner of a left-handed hitter, and he had to throw in his tryout over the handkerchief. He couldn't just throw a strike; he had to throw over a certain portion of the plate. And I guess again, different stories are saying it only took 5, 7 pitches, and Lou said, "Okay, this guy can still have it at the age of, you know, late 40s, can still do it." One thing I'd like to backtrack though, Ray, on Larry Doby, because I think it's important people realize this. And talking to Luke Epplin as he was writing the book, you know, Larry Doby actually integrated more cities in America than Jackie Robinson. So if you think about the way Major League Baseball was constructed in that period of time, there were 2 teams in St. Louis, there were 2 teams in New York, or 3 teams in New York, there were 2 teams in Chicago, Philly, and Boston, American League, National League. National League also Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. But the American League, because 2 of the 3 in New York were National League teams, you had Cleveland, Washington, D.C., and Detroit. So Larry and Jackie both went to St. Louis, New York, Chicago, Philly, and Boston. But Larry integrated Cleveland and then traveled to Washington and Detroit, where Jackie only traveled to Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. So in that sense, you know, Larry Doby integrating more cities to me is just an interesting aspect, um, because, as you said, he was the second guy. He was the second African American manager in the history of baseball behind the Indians, Frank Robinson. He doesn't get enough credit in the efforts that he made and what he had to live through to help others get their opportunity in our sport. Luckily for Cleveland, Satchel Page comes to town, and then all of a sudden, the Indians are having 5 men of color by 1954, and that is even before the Yankees integrated. Elston Howard didn't come along on the New York Yankee roster till 1955. You know, Boston Red Sox with Pumpsy Green didn't integrate till 1959, 12 years after Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby. So Cleveland, you know, embraced um, the social change, and it one of those things that I think all of us um, who are from this area are incredibly proud to say that our town did play a terrific role in social change in America.
You mentioned our town. We're talking a little bit about the book, Our Team, with Vice President Cleveland Indians Bobby DiBiasio, with this week's edition of Hey Bobby, brought to you by NECA-IBEW. And Bobby, you and I have talked for years about your special relationship with Bob Feller. So let's go to that aspect of this story and take us into the clubhouse, onto the playing field with Bob Feller and what he told you about that 48 team, the integration there with Satchel Page and Larry Doby, and how he and the team handled all that.
Well, Bob was pretty pragmatic, a gentleman. Um, if you could help me win, help me make more money, help our team be more competitive, I'm all for it. Um, you know, he would always say, and it's it is an interesting debate about which team, 54 or 48, were better. That's a hard thing to say. The only thing I can tell you is, the New York Yankees from what, 1940 to 1960 ruled baseball. They were first place most every year, going to the World Series 10 out of 12 years in a row, or some crazy number like that. The only time we derailed them was 1954 when we won 111 games. The Yankees actually won 103 games. That was the most wins they had in a single season during that 20-year span, was 103. And we had to win 111 to beat them. So that was a pretty remarkable team. Al Rosen won the MVP in 1953, the year before. But the 48 team, now that we're talking the book Our Team, I'm going to recommend that people, if you haven't watched the movie A Kid from Cleveland, that deals with the 1948 Cleveland Indians team helping a young fan. It's a terrific story. I think any Cleveland baseball fan would really have a fun time if you haven't already watched A Kid from Cleveland, because Bob Feller and Larry Doby and all those, and Lou Boudreau, and even Tris Speaker comes back being the player manager of the 1920 World Series teams, appears in the film as well. The players play themselves in the roles of the movie. So that's a fun thing. But Feller would always talk about that the team had it all, that there wasn't any deficiency. And then he would go on to talk about the nuances of the game of baseball, that the ball will bounce a certain way, a strike, like he always talks about, the pickoff play at second base where the umpire called the guy safe and he was clearly out. And then next thing you know, he scores a run, and that's the only run scored in that World Series game. The things these guys remember, every inch of it, every count in every at bat. But he would always talk about very lovingly the 48 team, but he did have a special, especially because he came back from the war and was still considered the best pitcher in baseball. He had just continued on from where he left off after enlisting in the U.S. Navy, and talk so glowingly about that 48 ball club for sure.
The name of the book that we've spent some time on with this edition of Hey Bobby, it's called Our Team. Luke Epplin put it together. If you haven't got it, I recommend it. Bobby recommended it to me a few weeks ago. Finally got it last week, just about done with it. It is terrific. And as Bobby mentioned, it's kind of more than baseball. It's a blending of personalities and cultures, and really from the owner on down. It's a terrific read, and it's baseball and the Indians. I think you'll enjoy it. Bobby, as we wrap up the show this week, it's got to be exciting. The governor, CDC, announcing that things are going to be changing, opening up a little bit, which I know we don't have the guidelines yet from the Cleveland Indians, because you can make your own guidelines, but it's got to be exciting that there's going to be probably more people in the stands, and that always makes the players more excited to come to the ballpark.
Absolutely. Very excited with the announcement by the governor, although there's always fine print involved in those scenarios. So we're scrubbing the fine print and working through how we're going to announce when, in fact, we will open up to more fans, hopefully 100% capacity here shortly, and any of our other thoughts and reasoning behind, masks, no masks, how we do those sorts of things. The interesting thing is our homestand here at the end of May bleeds over into June 1st and 2nd. And so we've already done the ticketing for June 1 and 2. So if in fact we say 100% capacity, it may not include June 1 and June 2, a Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon game against the Chicago White Sox, who sit above us in the divisional race. And then we come home on June 11th. I had to look at my schedule there. To come home on Friday, June 11th. And maybe that's the point that we identify that, okay, we're back to normal. But in actuality, this coming Friday, it's going to be a real sense of normalcy because we have Sugardale Dollar Dogs, we have post-game fireworks, we have the $2 party in the park presented by Miller Lite. So our friends at Dollar Bank are sponsoring our fireworks. So we've got the promotional calendar starting to get into full swing this Friday, and that feels a little bit more like normal. So we get that one more turn and we get to 100% capacity, and then people can start enjoying this ball club. And we need Mr. Plezak to be on his game tonight so we can get back into the win column on this road trip.
All right, another edition of Hey Bobby, Vice President, Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio. He joins us weekly during the baseball season, brought to you by NECA-IBEW. My friend, we'll get together again next week for another edition of Hey Bobby.
Thank you, Ray. Take care, buddy. Go Tribe.